Hello and welcome to another episode of The Modern Nerd. I'm Tim Bolin,
And I'm GJC.
and we are, as always, massive nerds. Now, as you can see this week, it's just me and GJC. Dan is out, his merchandise is out for this week, but he will be back next week with our undetermined topic, most likely just going over some things that came up. We've got to do a Obi-Wan Kenobi. We're going to go over some of the trailers that have been dropping lately. There was just Star Wars Celebration weekend, and we'll get to that next week most likely. So today we have a really fun one. We are going to be going over canceled TV shows that were canceled too soon, too early. And not just for the regular reasons. There could be a bunch of different ones, and we'll get into that and everything. Before we do, just check in. It's been a week since I've chatted here with GJC. How you been? What's anything new that's been going on?
Mm,
We
not
live
much.
boring lives.
Yeah, not much, Just streaming, playing
Yeah.
video games, playing Hearthstone,
I
watching a
saw you
few
did a
things.
Marbles stream
I did a Marvel
recently.
stream the first time in a long time because I want to test
Yeah.
out my new PC. And
Yeah.
then for those of you who probably are watching now, you might have noticed a difference in this episode and the last episode as well, as far as our just like quality of video, because this is
Yeah.
we are recording at a full 1080, which is really
Ooh.
nice, really nice and HD crisps. So that
Hey.
way, when you see it on YouTube, you're not having it upscaled from 720. For those of you who are tech nerds, there you go.
Well,
So hope you enjoy the
I've
quality
probably
change.
I've probably been uploading it incorrectly then. No shocker there. I'm still getting used to all this. I haven't really been doing much either. Lots of Fortnite. I got in one day I got two victory royales. I got a crowned victory royale
We
where
should
I
play.
held the victory crown and got the victory, which was a lot of fun for me. I had a very intense moment. Like got out of my chair, adrenaline was pumping. I was like, yeah, it was down to the wire. It was really cool. Other than that, I'm looking forward to the collision for Fortnite that comes out next week. So I'll be joining that. I haven't really been doing much, just still watching Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which we're going to talk about in a little bit here. Canceled TV shows. There is a laundry list of shows that have been canceled before their prime. Um, and for various reasons. I want to open it up with one that's much more controversial to even discuss these days, because it was by the disgraced Joss Whedon. It's two shows for me personally. It was Firefly and Dollhouse.
Let's get those out of the
And yeah,
way.
and I want to open this up by saying I do not condone any of his actions or the way he treats women or treats people on his set. I think that it was disrespectful, disgraceful, and I hope he doesn't really work ever again. Um, that being said, for a very long time, Firefly was one of my favorite all-time television shows, and I was on the bandwagon of people who wanted more than just the pretty lazy Serenity movie. Um, and honestly, like if someone else takes the reins and does it, I'm more than happy to have it come back still. I think it was, 14 episodes long, and it was ended way too soon. It was an excellent space cowboy show, that really kind of was very different in the sci-fi genre for its time, and I you're not going to really see much like that anymore. The closest thing that they had was like a live action version of Cowboy Bebop, and that didn't go well either. Um, but yeah, and then Dollhouse was 2 seasons long, and I thought it was super cool concept. Um, Basically, there was like people who had their kind of brains rewritten and were able to be programmed and could be turned into super spies or made to be famous, like all these different peoples, and it was really cool. And they muddled it up because they canceled it, but they gave them the opportunity to finish the series out. So the second season is like a really slow paced first half, and then literal, you can feel the change halfway through, and it was just compressed. Everything he wanted to do over the next few seasons was put into like 6 episodes. So, you hear these things now that have come out about Joss Whedon, and you're like, is this why they were canceled? Like, did he have a contract with these people at Fox, and they were like, well, we're going to do it, but you're a piece of shit, so we're going to cancel everything you do so that we fulfill the contract and we don't have to deal with you anymore. So, there's a lot behind that. They did well on TV, so that kind of makes me think that that's what happened. George, you were telling me about a podcast with Michael Rosenbaum, Inside of You with Michael Rosenbaum, which I do love, and I missed the episode with James Marster, and I guess he goes into a little bit more detail about working on the set of Buffy, even all the way back in the is that early 2000s when that show was on, I believe. So I missed that, and I'm very interested to hear more about it, because, he was at one point a really good writer, and now he's a fucking asshole and piece of shit. So I said it, and that's my stance on Whedon. Do you care to weigh in on any of these? Did you even watch Firefly or Dollhouse?
I didn't watch Dollhouse. I watched Firefly though.
Yeah, it was a good show.
Firefly, and I watched it like long after it was on. I enjoy it, and I actually have watched it more than once actually, and I really enjoy it. And one of my favorite actresses is on it, Marina Baccarin.
Very good, Inara Sarah.
Yeah, she's amazing. Like, and the reason why I know her is because she's on another show that I'm going to talk about, kind of. But she's gone on to do really great, successful things, and her husband's pretty cool too, Benjamin Kenzie, who's Gordon in Gotham, and also Ryan in the OC.
Oh shit, they're married?
Yeah, they have a beautiful.
I didn't know
together.
that.
He's a wonderful.
That's good for them.
He actually is is one of those not anti cryptocurrency, but like pro like awareness about like how it's being used the wrong way by celebrities. He's written a few articles about it, so it's but yeah. Anyways, that's a little off topic.
I mean, that's cool. I like that they're together, man. I think
that's a cool. Yeah,
couple,
like
so.
You could see that. Like that's a cool couple. They're a really nice family. Yeah. So
I love her. I think she's a wonderful actress.
Yeah,
I hold like a little bit of resentment because every time I go to a convention, she's on the bill, and then like a couple of days before the show, she cancels, and I'm like, come on! Like I never get a chance to meet her. So I mean, nothing against her. I just think it's funny that happens every single time. So it's always just like, oh, is Marina Baccarin in there? Oh, no, she's not because she was supposed to be. So I always think that was entertaining.
That's kind of funny. But yeah, I really enjoy Firefly, and it's funny because Firefly is kind of a cowboy, space cowboy, and who would have thought that would be like a genre of sci-fi television? But now it's like it's actually a pretty common theme, space cowboy.
Yeah.
Like, what's his name is about to have one in Star Wars. Cobb. Vance Cobb is about to have a space cowboy style. He's already living in a space cowboy village. So
Star Wars is a space cowboy.
Yeah, it's a samurai cowboy.
Space cowboy opera type feel to it.
Depending upon which show or in which angle you're looking at it. Yeah. But
yeah.
There you go.
So I think we can agree on a couple of these. We both made a long list of these things, and I think we're going to kind of just break down a few of them. Some that really don't need, I don't know, where are the ones that we want to spend the most time on? What did you say? Stargate? Probably Stargate Universe, which
we could do a little bit season.
Of that. Heroes. Let's go all the way back. Let's do the old school 97 X-Men TV show.
Yeah, let's do okay. I'm down.
It got canceled like way before it should have. Like it was doing very well for. Yes, it was a very expensive show for the time.
It was not the people who made the show, I mean's fault that the quality of the show dropped significantly in that last season. It was purely because Marvel was going bankrupt. And if you know anything about the history of Marvel all the way back to the 80s and 90s, about how all their IP was essentially sold off because they didn't have money to even keep the lights on, it's a sad story. And like they ran out of money. And that's why X-Men 97 went downhill. So
comics
I understand why it got canceled. They try to do what they could with what they had, and you can notice a big difference between the quality. But still, like everyone knows that theme song, right? Like everyone knows that just those few chords like just takes you back to those Saturday mornings where you're watching it. It's just it was so good. It's so edgy.
It is kind of relevant because at some point we're going to start talking about shows that have been revamped or picked up by other networks, and they're coming back with X-Men 97 on Disney Plus.
Who would have thought?
And it looks like the same animation style. They're not really updating it, which I'm like, thank God. Like that was like that Spider-Man, like they had a Fantastic Four show, like they were all the same animation style, and it was I love it. And it's gonna come in like it's gonna be HD, it's gonna be full, full widescreen.
Yeah.
Like you go back and watch it now, and it is a little hard to watch just because everybody's watching on these high def monitors, so they're all trying so hard to like up convert and that it looks bad.
Yeah, the quality doesn't really, you could just leave it, it's fine. But I think like it's an interesting style of art. It's an interesting color palette that's not used in animation nowadays, and I think some of the voice acting was it was really good for a children's TV show. Actually, I don't know. Like I'm just like I think it was ahead of its time as far as like TV animation. Like I just don't think people thought to do something like that back then. And now it's like, and the really great storytelling and really just long story arcs that like were very fulfilling.
Yeah. And like those characters, those versions of those characters were the way a lot of people our age really got into like this world, into comic books. Into those,
absolutely.
into
I'm
those
one of them.
characters because and I'm no excuse. I read X-Men and I read mostly Wolverine and Spider-Man when I was that age, but that like the animated show was like the reason I really got into comic books a lot more.
I only knew Superman before that, and I didn't really know that many. I didn't own that many comics before that, and I owned Superman obviously during the height in our age of like when Superman first died, and that's when I really got into Superman. But I knew nothing about Marvel stuff until X-Men. I didn't even really know Spider-Man that well. So
that's fair. And I mean, they had to this day one of my favorite versions of Rogue. Like you don't get a lot. You got that Southern drawl. She's powerful. She's a main character. She's not Anna Paquin's character in the movie, which was just a joke. Nothing wrong with her. She's a wonderful actress. Just the way the character was written and the arcs they gave her, it was bad. It was bad. You're like, come on, go. Now they have the ability. You've got the character. Man, I don't want to get too far into the now, but like you've got Captain Marvel. You've got you can bring in the mutants.
Yeah,
like
that's what I was going to say too.
It here.
Well, they were saying how Doctor Strange, when he was in Doctor Strange, he was like passing through all the dimensions, and there was an animated dimension, and they were like, is that the dimension? Is this the dimension that we see in X-Men 97? Because there's an animated dimension that he passed through, and it looked kind of like X-Men 97. So in any part of the MC multiverse, it could be possible that this X-Men 97 does technically exist somewhere, probably. So maybe a road from that point.
I gotta look. I'm trying to figure it out while we're doing this here, which is not a great idea. Oh my God, they did it. They brought back a guy. The guy's name is Cal Dodd, and he was the original voice of Wolverine in the X-Men show, and he is now the voice once again, which I'm sad. I like Steve Blum. He did it in X-Men and the Wolverine and the X-Men, which is the next show I want to talk about.
Let's talk about it.
Which only got one season, which was like 24 episodes or something. Back when they were doing long shows, and I missed those, and I'll get into that a whole nother episode. But Wolverine and the X-Men, it almost felt like it took place after that original show, because they had, it opens with pre-established characters, whereas in the original X-Men show, you're kind of getting to know them a little bit more, whereas here you're kind of seeing where they are now, which I'm not saying that they are. I'd have to really rewatch it, which I watched in the last couple of years. I watched it again, That show is fantastic.
It's on
The
Disney
premise
Plus.
behind it, yeah, the premise behind it, go watch it if you can, is that it's in some future where the X-Men were hanging out and then some catastrophe
Catastrophe
happens. I won't
happens.
ruin it.
Yeah.
And they all split up, and then someone, I can say this, Charles from the future is talking to Wolverine to try and make him, now he has to lead the X-Men to their future because of what Charles sees and knows, and they have to try and, X-Men are known for dealing with time travel.
It's very
Oh,
Days
it's
of
so
Future
good.
Past inspired kind of. It has that Days of
Yeah.
Future Past feel of like trying to change the past because the future that they thought they were saving was actually so incredibly dystopic that they're like,
Yeah.
no, we need to this is not good. We need to go back in time, like kind of thing. It's a really good show. And also just as things were starting to come together, the show got canceled, and I was like.
And they left it with a cliffhanger,
They
and
left
I
it
was
with a
so excited
cliffhanger
to
just
see it
when
too.
just when things were starting to get like come together, and you're like, oh man, like here it is, and then it's like, oh man, oh it's over.
Yep. Yep.
Breaks
And
my
I
heart.
think, if my memory serves, this happened before, or was it, maybe they were in talks, but it happened before the Disney merger.
It
If I
happened
stand,
before the Disney merger.
yeah. So, but they may have already been talking about the merger. I don't know. So my guess is it was canceled because they knew they were going to be merging, and they're not going to continue that when they're going to do something else. They had other ideas, is my guess. Now, another show, which was also canceled after one or two seasons, which was canceled precisely like in the news because of the merger, was
Yeah.
Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes,
Oh,
which was,
another
to
show with
this
a great
day,
song. Yeah.
yeah, an amazing version of these superheroes, and some great stories in there. They
Great
got a great
stories.
one with Kang, and like they got all
Yeah.
these different things happening, and it was they did two seasons. I believe it was two. Was it three? I don't
I want to
remember.
say two. And
And
also
then
a lot of the heroes individually got like episodes that were like really like just centered. Like here is your you want to know more about Black Panther. This is your Black Panther episode. Like you want
and
to know
they
more
did
about
that.
Hank Pym. This is the Pym episode. Like, and it was exciting and it was fascinating. Each one delving deeper into all these characters. Obviously everyone knows Tony. Everyone knows Steve. But like, to really give these characters a fleshed out, like nice episodes about them, and not some of them got more than one. A lot of them got more than one.
Oh yeah, and it dates back. Doing that is a Marvel trope. They've been doing that since the '97 X-Men. They did that a lot. They took little adventures and
Gambit had his
set them
own
off on
story.
their own.
Oh man,
They
the
did that
Gambit
in
episode.
Yeah, and they did that in Wolverine and the X-Men, and they did all these different little side adventures. Nightcrawler and Wolverine and the
Nightcrawler
X-Men
had
got
a great story.
great little a couple of episodes there.
Nightcrawler. Oh.
Yeah, and when they canceled Earth's Mightiest Heroes, they announced, oh, we're going to bring in a show called Avengers Assembled, and it's going to more closely feel. It's going to be more of the tone of the MCU, and it's interconnected, and it's a fine show. It's fine.
I don't think it's still on, right?
I don't think so. I can't bring myself to watch all of them because I'm just sad that Earth's Mightiest Heroes was canceled. And it was like a Disney XD when it was on. It wasn't even.
Yeah.
Oh,
80s.
It was during the merger, was it? Maybe that second season was on Disney XD. I don't know. But again, things just being canceled for the wrong reasons. You could have very well just kept going with the show and it would have been fine. You don't need to intertwine your cartoons with your MCU. It can be fine. You can have different entities. They do it with their comic books. They've got different storylines or different timelines running at the same time in comics. And I'm just like, what the hell? So why not do it with your TV shows? Anyway, I'm not going to get into Marvel and my grievances with the way they run their comic books. I guess another Marvel one that I know you watched was Agent Carter. I didn't watch it as much, but it was what, 3 seasons?
Yeah, I think so. Also on Disney Plus now.
Yeah.
Agent Carter was really good. Obviously, those of you who don't know, Agent Carter is Peggy Carter from the original Captain America, and Haley Atwell is just so talented and so amazing and so funny that they were like, why did we like, why don't we just give her a show of her own and see what we do? And it was like a period piece. It was quirky. It had some like old school spy feel thriller to it because she plays, essentially what was the predecessor to the Agents of Shield. And she's one
founder of Shield.
She's a founder of Shield. So this is kind of like how her and what's his name, Stark, and essentially
Howard.
How Howard and her came to build Shield together, and the adventures that Howard had, and also Jarvis is in this too, which is great.
The original Jarvis.
And Jarvis is in it too, which is freaking amazing. And
you see him. You see Jarvis and the guy who played Howard, I believe, in Endgame.
Yes, you do see him in Endgame. Well, the guy who played Howard is not Dominic. What's his name?
No, Cooper
from Agent Carter, but it's the Howard from Iron Man 2.
Yeah. Well, because they went forward in time, so Howard's older.
Howard's older. Yeah, it's not Dominic Cooper, but Dominic Cooper, who's also did a great Dominic Cooper, who essentially he always said he played essentially his idea of Howard was he thought of like what Tony would be like in that time frame, like in that era. Much. So he's like, we need to see that connection, and so he always played it like that. But Agent Carter, like, I think what is interesting is you'll see through the list is that a lot of these shows got kind of like a save or a revival or something else to kind of try to finish the story. And in many ways, Agent Carter Peggy got her finish. She got her story ended. You thought it actually ended in the last Captain America with Civil War, but really I think she got her ending in Endgame with Steve. So it's in many ways she didn't get the show that she should have gotten and the ending she got for her show, but her story, full well what happens to her life.
Yeah.
So it's
why did it get canceled? Do you know?
I think it got canceled because of ratings. Mostly
Fair.
ratings.
It just makes you wonder if they had just waited and put them all out on Disney Plus, would they have done better?
I think so.
Would it? You could do them as like, again, they're almost just like mini series, as opposed to like a full on TV show. Although I guess Loki just got picked up again for season 2.
And like Marvel, like you want to talk about people who Marvel have a soft spot for. Marvel has Kevin Feige loves Haley Atwell for some that is like his handpicked actress was her, and he just loves her so much. So he's always looking for opportunities to get her, and that's one of the main reasons why you've seen her in What If and also Doctor Strange, is because they just like, we need to find a way to get her to come back. She's so amazing. It's like
what channel was it on?
It was on what? It was on ABC.
Was it on ABC?
It was on ABC because it's technically Agents of Shield /
and they're owned by
Marvel
Disney
spinoff. So, so was on ABC. But there you go.
Let's do the last of our Marvel related shows, and this one will be a little bit deeper on reasoning, but the Netflix Marvel shows all pretty much got canceled
same time
before they really had they're each in almost individual story arcs, which is nice. Each season you can watch on its own, and you don't necessarily need to see the previous one, other than maybe Daredevil season 3, because it brings back a character. But I mean, for the most part, you can almost watch them individually, which I think does it justice, because you can just pick up whatever you want and start watching and be satisfied with the shows. But again, these were canceled because of the Disney merger, and where they had was it canceled because of the Disney merger? Or was Fox?
It was canceled because of the merger.
Yeah, and so then they kept going though.
It was canceled mostly because of they had a contract. It was because Disney Plus launched and they were starting to do Disney Plus shows. It was. And so Disney didn't want to renew their contract with Netflix. And then Netflix was like, well, we'll just finish the deal we have now and then hold on to them as long as we can before we have to sell them back to you.
Yeah. Which, I mean, again, this is also another one of those shows that's kind of being revived. They're bringing back at least Daredevil. They've confirmed a season 4. And we know that's happening. We know they've already brought the characters back. You saw Charlie Cox in Spider-Man. You saw Vincent D'Onofrio
Yeah.
in Hawkeye, and so we're getting these characters again, which
I'm
is
gonna put
nice. I don't
money
know.
on that. I'm gonna just go out there and say I'm gonna put money on it. We're gonna see Luke Cage and Jessica Jones way before we think we're going to. I think that
You
they're
think we're gonna see him
actually.
in like Echo or something?
I think we'll see them in Echo, or I think we'll see them in She-Hulk. I think that
Ooh, that would make sense
a
because
lot of people, She-Hulk. I mean, Daredevil showing up in She-Hulk seems like a almost guaranteed
a
as well.
no-brainer. Yeah.
Yeah, even
Well,
just
we know
one
he's
episode.
he's being loaned out to like every show and movie right now because
Right.
they're like just
They
he's
love
the
Charlie
one
Cox.
everyone wants is Daredevil, so just put him everywhere. So,
So
but I
it's
mean, it's interesting to see what they're going to do with it. We've talked about this before and we'll talk about it again, but like, if based on what we've seen with the Kingpin, he was very different of a character, it felt like. And I don't know if that was just because of the moment and, like what was going on in the show, but I really do hope that they kind of keep a lot of these characters the same. It'll be weird to see what they do with Punisher because I think they've already edited a lot of the
yeah,
show
we
and
talked about
kind of
that.
changed the verbiage and
Yeah,
all that stuff that they're using. So I think Daredevil and like all the other shows will be a lot easier to keep some of the tone. You can keep it gritty. Look what they did with Moon Knight. That was a pretty intense, fairly violent TV show that they gave us. So we can still get these shows that we loved and enjoyed. From Marvel. It just depends if they're going to do it or not. So, we'll see, I guess, what they're going to do with this revival. Where do you want to go from here, sir?
I'll talk about another thing that's on Disney Plus real quick.
Please.
Is Gargoyles, owned by ABC
Oh yeah.
Disney.
Yeah.
Gargoyles is a cartoon that is very dear. It's probably my favorite cartoon in the world.
Nice.
It's very dear to my heart. It is. I mean, for those who don't know the premise, it's like a story about gargoyles who are stoned by day and then turn into real life gargoyles at night. So it's a children's show, but it's back on Disney Plus, and if you've never watched it, I really suggest you watch it. It's just great storytelling. Gave me my love of Shakespearean stories and Shakespearean lore, because a lot of the characters from the show are inspired by Shakespeare. So, and then it got canceled mostly because I think, despite the fact that kids really enjoyed it, and it had its own success, I think it's just purely because it was not a show that it was just not a show right for its era. Like, it was a show way too far ahead of its time because it dealt with serious issues. Sometimes it dealt with some things that I think kids shows and executives didn't think kids shows should be dealing with, so it got canceled.
And it had one of the greatest voices in in TV and movie history with Keith David.
Mm-hmm.
It was
It had a
wonderful.
lot of Star Trek alums in it too.
It did.
Tons of Next Generation characters. Michael Dorn. All these famous people from Star Trek were actually in the show too. So, and it was really just well written and great storytelling. The show has like has like essentially 2 or 3 seasons. The direction of the show, I think, also kind of changed in that last season, because I think there might have been like a kind of a weird production change. So, as far as like writers and people behind the scenes, so it's essentially it fell victim to not necessarily the people who created it and the fans, but the people who make the calls, which are like executives and studios and stuff like that. So typical.
It was sad. It was a good show. It wasn't any. I watched it when I was a kid. It wasn't one where I was like, "Oh my God, Gargoyles is on," but it was always on after something, so I watched it, and like I watched most of them, and it was a darker show for its time. It was rivaled right around with like Batman. The tone of Batman, the animated series, where
I think
it was very
meant
dark
to
and
go
gritty.
against Batman, and that was the idea of it.
Yeah, which is hard to do.
Which is hard to
Let's
do,
be
but
honest.
I mean, they did what they did, and they did a pretty good job, and they told some really wonderful stories. So
They did. It was a great show,
Mhm.
and I will miss it. But
That's a
who
show
knows?
that I think they could actually do now that they have the rights for it, and Disney, put it on Disney Plus. Is they could turn that into a live action like series or
No,
film.
just leave it animated. I'm tired.
I'm just saying.
That's a whole nother conversation.
I'm
Is
just
all
saying.
these live action adaptations.
I'm just saying it could happen. Okay, all right.
I don't need them in my life. I'm fine with, like I'm more and more concerned about the Avatar live action Netflix. I don't want to watch that. Like I just want more
I don't
animated. Do more animation. It's fantastic. You can do so much with it.
Slice is not a fan
much.
of Chip and Dale, the reboot.
I haven't seen it. I want to watch it. Actually, I'm excited for that one, but
Okay.
it looks, it's a mashup. I love mashups. I loved the Sonic the Hedgehog movie. I thought that was awesome. I want to watch the second one. I'm excited. I hear it's actually really good.
I've only seen the second one.
Really? Oh, I'm
Yeah.
excited. Don't tell me anything.
Okay.
I'm so excited for Idris Elba as Knuckles. Like, come on, that's fantastic. Like, come on, are you shitting me? And then Jim Carrey just being a dark
Carrey.
Jim Carrey again. It was good. It was good. I can skip some of these. I want to talk about The Tick for a second. Did you see The Tick? The re-release, not the Patrick Warburton one, but the one they did on Amazon.
Yeah, no, I didn't.
That was
I've heard good things about it.
Show.
I've heard really good things about it.
It was so good, and it got one season, maybe two. I don't quote me. But it got canceled, and I'm sad because I really wanted to see where this was going to go, and they're not doing anymore. And I don't think it did great. But I thought it was really well done.
Been a weird concept, right? As far as,
but it felt like a regular show. Like the old cartoon and the Patrick Warburton one were both way over the top, campy and like cheesy, and they laid into it, and that was the times, and that was fine. But like now they made it a little bit more serious. Like Arthur, his sidekick, was like some deep emotional things happening, and it's crazy and it's ridiculous, but like it was written really well, and I thought it was good, and I was excited, and then they canceled it. All these streaming shows, Netflix and Amazon is just as much as to blame as the rest of them, but they're just like throwing money at everything and then canceling it. And they've got these shows that are really good and were doing really well for them, and then they cancel them. Like this one, like Sense8, which I watched.
I've heard about it.
All of it, and I was excuse me, hold on. I was hooked. If you don't know about this show, it's from the Wachowskis, and they wrote a show that is very reflective of them. It really portrays them more. It's heavy in the LGBTQ. There's a trans character who is just like wonderful, and they touch on all of these different issues while telling you this fantastical type of show where this pod of 8 people all have this weird connection to each other and can kind of see each other in the space that they're in. So like if me and George were connected right now, I'd be able to appear as though I'm standing with George in his wherever you are, and you'd be standing here. We could like have that connection. It would be like, that's what the show kind of focused on, and how these people's lives were intertwining. And it got 2 seasons, if I'm not mistaken, and then a movie because it got canceled. They canceled it, and there was this giant uproar from the Netflix community. We're like, are you shitting me? Like, what the hell, man? This is your top rated show, and you just cancel it. Because there was a ton of, like, it was all shot on location. There was almost no sets made, so it was super expensive to make this show, and it had some crazy scenes, and so they canceled it. But then with just like Firefly, it got brought back as a movie, and the movie finished out the story, but it's never as satisfying when something that should be another 7 or 8 episodes is tied up in 2 hours, and it always feels a little cheap. But if you get a chance, I would highly recommend to go back and watch Sense8. It is a wonderful show. You will laugh. You will 100% cry. You'll find some really cool action scenes. It is very moving and very well done by the Wachowskis. One of the better things they've done in their career that is all the way through. If not, I think their best work, because The Matrix has taken a dip.
You didn't
Speed
like
Racer was
Ascending?
Speed Racer. No, shut up with that. That get that crap
You
out
didn't
of
like
here.
Channing Tatum as a wolf?
And then you got, it's funny, I just heard someone talk about it earlier. It was on Brooklyn Nine-Nine. And you had what's his name? Um, come on, Eddie Redmayne, right? Wasn't he
Yeah,
in
as
that?
like a bad guy. Yeah.
And it was the worst thing I've ever seen. It was so bad. It was
Anyways.
so incredibly bad. But no, I really liked Did you watch Sense8?
No, I did not.
Oh, it's good. It was good. It's worth the watch if you haven't seen it. Um, fully fully watch that show. All right, I just went on a rant. What do you got for me?
Um, let's do. Oh, okay. Since we talked about Netflix, here's a good segue. Um, there's a show called Lucifer. For those of you who don't know about it,
Is that
it's
a
about
Netflix show?
yeah. Okay, so it was originally on Fox.
Mm.
It's about the devil coming to Earth. He gives up his job as the devil and says he doesn't want to run hell anymore. And he says, "F you, Dad." God is his dad. That's what they call him. He shows up
Really?
on Earth and decides to run a nightclub in LA. And while he's doing that, he meets a cop and kind of starts developing a friendship / interest in her. And it's kind of like they're like they solve. It's kind of like a buddy cop show, but like the devil is the partner, is the quirky partner instead of, that's the twist to it. And what on the surface looks like a very typical kind of quirky cop buddy show, um, in the end changes and develops into this larger kind of mythology and story behind him and his family, which are all these other angels, the story of demons and things like that. So it's very well done. It's the comics, of course, it was originally a comic as well. The comics was actually done by the same people who did Good Omens,
Sandman.
American Gods, like all
It
those.
came. It's pulled directly from
The Sandman
oh my God,
comics.
I'm gonna get his name. Neil Gaiman.
Yeah, Neil Gaiman, who wrote.
It's pulled directly from the Sandman comics,
Yeah.
which are some of the most prolific stuff he's written
Yeah.
in comic books. He's done other things.
And so essentially what happened is Fox canceled it, but because people love the show so much and put in such a huge campaign to try to bring it back, Netflix brought it back for like 2 more seasons and ended the show and got to like give it a actually legit. I think they were only going to bring it back for 1 season, and people are like, no, like, and then they were like, okay, we'll just give it another season, I guess. And so they ended up giving it, I think, almost full 2 seasons to really end the show and finish their story. So that's just another thing to show that in these days that kind of thing is possible. But really a great concept, really wonderful story. Also wonderful musical performance. The main character who plays Lucifer, Morningstar, is like one of the most talented singers I've ever heard, and so he does a lot of live performances too. And it's
Do
really
they sing in this show?
He sings in the show because he's got a nightclub, and so there's like a piano in the nightclub sometimes.
So there's like musical segments in Lucifer?
No, he's like, yeah, sometimes he'll be singing, but it's like because he's like an
Not
artist,
like a musical, but
not like a musical. But I think there was a musical episode, but not like a musical like show in the sense that like Glee is. But occasionally he performs at his nightclub, because he has a nightclub, and
that's cool. And it's got an amazing actress, Trisha Helfer. She was in it for a while.
That's really actually why I started watching Lucifer, is because of Trisha Helfer. Because I was like, what? Trisha Helfer is on the show? And I was like, okay, I want to watch that. And then she's got a cool character too, so not to spoil anything.
We'll kind of talk about that in a little bit, because it's going to tie into one of the ones, which we'll leave closer for the end. Now, we both watched Heroes. I never finished Heroes because it got real bad. It got real bad. Real fast. And it was the first season. It's one of those ones where the first season was
amazing.
Like, oh, this is different. This is new. I wouldn't say amazing, but it was.
Dude, if you watch that first season back, and it's really, really good.
It's a fresh take on superpowers and superheroes, and it was really fascinating.
You have to remember, this was before. I want to say this was like maybe, I don't know, was it before the original X-Men movies?
No, those movies came out in like 2003. This was 2006. 2006 to 2010. And I think that includes the reboot. And that's the weirdest thing to me, is it went 3 or 4 seasons and it got canceled. and it was rightfully so because it was during the writer's
Writer
strike.
strike.
So the writers that were on it towards the end were bad.
Hmm.
And another one of our one of my favorite shows of all time suffered from that as well.
Yeah.
But it it got brought back. Like they canceled it and then they did it again, but like it they started over. Am I right in saying that? That like they basically did the first season again, sort of. Is that right? Or am I just remembering this wrong?
I don't know.
It was weird when they brought it back. It really didn't hit at all. Like it was everyone was like, why are we watching this? Like it gave us Zachary Quinto, who's an excellent actor. You've got, another show for Milo Ventimiglia. I don't know how to say his last
Yeah,
name.
from This Is Us.
Ventimiglia,
Yeah.
Mila, and he was,
Hayden
which I've
Panettiere.
seen.
This is the first show that Hayden Panettiere was on that gave her
Yep.
big break. So
After what's it called, right? She already had done.
she already done Remember the Titans. That was like her first big thing.
Oh yeah, yeah. No. Was it Coach Carter? No, not Coach Carter. Yeah, Remember the Titans. You were right. I'm sorry. That was my fault. But you've got some great actors in there, and it just didn't necessarily land towards the end there.
Yeah,
Um,
out of
which
its
was
control.
weird. Yeah, it was weird for me that you'd bring it back and kind of just redo the same thing instead of pick up where you left off. It's sort of
They
like
did do a
it was a
reboot where they
reboot.
picked up. There was also a thing where they picked up where they left off, kind of, which was like 10 years later, and that kind
Yeah,
of
which
talked about the kids and like the next generation of gifted people, and then like what happened to them. So it was all
yeah,
right.
it was weird. But it makes you kind of wonder, like, if this show hadn't suffered from the writer strike, like, would they have been able to keep it strong? Like, so many shows start off great, and HBO had a run of them for a while, like Weeds, Orange is the New Black.
I love Weeds.
Yeah, but it got weird, man. It got
Yeah.
real weird. It lost its charm. But then, what was the other one? Anyway, there was a bunch of shows where like they start off real strong, but then like for whatever reason they just lose their footing in the middle of it and go off the rails. And that's kind of what happened, unfortunately, because of the writer strike. But like, do you think something like that would have happened to a show like this? Like, how original can you keep it
Yeah,
for
it's a
that
good
long?
question. It's a good question.
So, and that was a lot of the draw to the show, was it was a very original feel for
Yeah, it was
a comic
fresh.
book or superhero type thing. It was, pre Iron Man, so it was, we didn't have a lot to go on back then. But I liked it the first season. I want to talk about a show called Human Target real quick, also based on a comic book. This was an interesting concept. Have you heard of this one?
Nope.
This came out probably around that same time, maybe like 2008. I'd have to look it up, and I'm tired of switching my screens. And it was this guy who, in the comic books, he would basically look like he'd take this person's appearance. So someone would hire this guy because they're in trouble. They're like, "Hey man, someone's trying to kill me. I need some help." So this guy would become a human target. I forgot the character's name because it was an older show. But he, in the comic books, would look like the person that he hired and would become them and put himself in the crossfires and then take down the person that was trying to kill him or her. And in the show, it was a little different, obviously, because they're not going to just continuously hire or like that same actor to become like a new person to be the main character every episode. That would be a little weird. So this guy kind of disguises himself a little bit, but like puts himself in the crossfire and takes over. And it had, I don't remember the actor's name. He's been in a couple things, but Chi McBride and oh no, I had it, like Jackie Earl Haley, the guy who played Rorschach and he was in Freddy Krueger as well, and he was in a couple of scenes in that Scorsese movie with DiCaprio, Shutter Island, and it was
I like how you
It was-
describe that.
It was a great show, and the dynamic and the storytelling ability to kind of make this each episode its own thing with like a little side story, like a typical kind of show. And then there was a character in the first season who had been on once or twice, maybe 3 times, as like someone who kind of like ran this like a security agency, but like from the dark, or like was someone who used to work with this person. I don't remember the dynamic directly, but it was the woman who played. She was in Game of Thrones, and she was the lover of the Viper. Was his name? Oh my God. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Yes, I do know who you're talking about.
I don't remember her name, but she was the actress,
Yes,
and
she
was pretty.
She was also in Hustle. What is her
Yes, and she came on in the second season and kind of was in, like, she owned this new company now and it really just it completely changed the dynamic between the 3 main characters. And there's sometimes when that's great, and this was not one of them. And then the show got canceled after the second season because the writers took a risk and it didn't work. And the ratings went down after like the 3rd episode in the second season. And I watched it with my uncle, and we were both like, yeah, they kind of ruined the show and it got canceled, and we're not terribly sad, but I wish they had kept something like that going. It would have been cool to see. If you get a chance, go watch the first season of Human Target. I have zero idea where you can find it, but if you can look it up, it's worth a watch, that first season. So yeah.
I guess I will talk about real quickly something kind of like that called Pushing Daisies. Pushing
HBO,
Daisies, ABC. Pushing Daisy was on ABC. It was a very crazy stylistic show. Lee Pace is in it. Stars Lee Pace. He's a baker. He has this crazy ability where he can bring things that are dead back to life, but only one time.
The first episode.
Yeah, if he touches it, something that's dead comes back to life. So, but the problem is if he touches it a second time, the thing dies for good. He saves a bunch of money as a baker because all the supplies that he needs for his fruit pies, or he buys rotten fruit and he brings them back to life and then fills them up because he's not going to eat his own pies that he bakes to sell to people. So the people that are eating his food are actually eating brought back to life fruit. So it's a very interesting concept. But anyways, he's the whole idea is that he's like, because of his ability, is discovered by somebody he brought back, and it exposes them to a detective, a private investigator, and so he helps solve murders essentially. So this group of people, Kristen Chenoweth's in it. She won an Emmy for the show. There's some crazy dream sequences. It's a very surreal, like, stylistic show that you just, like, when you see it, you're like, I've never seen a show like this before. Just the set pieces, everything is very quirky, almost animated, kind of almost seems like a play, but not, like, has a weird feel to it. But essentially, it's a mystery. Every single episode they're solving mysteries kind of murders. So
And
really
he brings
quirky.
back a dead person to help solve.
To help solve who killed them. Yeah, exactly. It's really funny.
I can see that causing problems.
Yeah. So, but then he, of course, brought back this girl that he fell in love with, kind of, but he can't touch her again because if he does, she'll be dead for good.
Of course.
So him and her just have this whole like romance that goes on, but they can't touch each other. It's really funny.
How long did it go on?
Like I want to say 2 or 3 seasons, maybe 2 seasons, 3 seasons, no more than 3. And then some of the larger stories, overarching stories about like him and things like that, just never got finished, and it was just sad to see. So
yeah,
typical. Didn't have the ratings because it's just a critically acclaimed show, but just didn't have the ratings for ABC to warrant, because it's of the set. I can tell the set is pretty expensive looking. So
yeah. And like, as time slots make a difference, what it's up against makes a huge difference. If it was on during the time of like, like Modern Family and like these other shows that like dominated in the ratings and dominated in everything, you're gonna just be pushed to the wayside. Which, who knows? Maybe that's whole nother show right there. But it's sad when good shows kind of go under the radar because certain things just overshadow them, and it's a bummer. There are a few more on our list. I'm gonna lump a couple together because they kind of make sense. It's Futurama and Family Guy.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was gonna say.
they it's
Same
interesting
story,
because
really, the same
yeah,
story.
at the time both of these shows were on slightly different times, but some overlap.
Both
But
on
they were like
Fox.
yeah, but they were like the highest rated like not rated necessarily. Family Guy at one point for sure was like the highest thing they ever had, next to Simpsons, but it was beating out Simpsons because Simpsons had been on for 20 years at that point. Um, and then, Futurama, which was from the creator of The Simpsons, and they both were doing great, and they were just rising in the ratings, and fans were like just all over them, and especially Futurama, because that's like a smart show and a really well
Ahead of
written
its
show.
time.
Whereas like,
Very ahead of its time.
oh yeah,
And
and
the
like Family
predictions
Guy,
what's crazy is the predictions it made about the future, like a lot of them fucking came true. Like they predicted
mhm,
that Donald Trump would become president, and it did happen.
that's Simpsons. That's not
Oh,
Futurama.
okay. Well,
But yeah,
Futurama did predict a lot of things too.
it did. If we get like a reanimated head of Nixon, then they'll be spot
Oh
on.
my god.
But
Knock
the
knock.
show is great, and Family Guy is very different than Futurama.
It is very different.
It's a bunch of fart jokes and stupid humor, and it takes pot shots at a lot of celebrities, and it's not
Yeah.
afraid to do so, and I respect it for that. And both of these shows were canceled after about two or three seasons. Right around that time, they were both canceled. And everyone was like, "Are you shitting me? Like, why would you do such a thing?" Like, everyone was like, "I am personally hurt by this decision of yours, Fox, to cancel these shows." And then Fox was basically like, "My bad, we'll bring it back." And like Futurama did something different though. They went out of their way and they made their own individual. Matt Groening did 3 movies, yes, and released them straight to DVD on his own. With some other company, I'm assuming. And basically, Fox was like, "Oh shit, okay, these are doing well. We'll go ahead and renew you, but we're gonna take those movies you made, chop them up, and make it a season." And you're like, "Well, first of all, that's cheap. You're an asshole for doing that. Let those be alone and let them get back to writing." And then they continued doing it, and then they got canceled again, and then brought back by Fox again, and then eventually canceled and brought back by Comedy Central, if I'm not mistaken, at one point. And now they're being brought back again on Hulu. And it's just like, one, how much is too much? It's only got 9 seasons, if I'm not mistaken. Family Guy's back after it got canceled twice, and it's been going for 19 seasons. Even Seth MacFarlane has gone on the record and been like, "I left the show after season 7. He's no longer in charge of the show. He doesn't write. He just does the voices and comes in." He's like, "But I think the show should have ended at 7." He's like, "I stepped away to do other things." And he's like, 7 seasons is long enough for any one show to go on. And I think it would have been much more well received in time, because now it feels very cheap and poorly written.
Yeah, it's
So,
formulaic.
there's a lot of right now things that are happening like that. Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which I'm not going to go into too much, but it is still, in my opinion, one of the funniest shows that happened in the last 20 years. But they were canceled and then picked up by Hulu. And then, like a lot of shows are being canceled and re-picked up and brought on. And the last 2 we want to talk about, one of them, which is one of George's favorite TV shows, the same thing happened to that, where it was on a network and it got canceled and picked up somewhere else.
Oh,
And
actually, before we go to that,
yeah.
I have one more. Is
Please.
Covert Affairs, real quick. It was on USA. It's a spy thriller. Piper Baribeau, who's from Coyote Ugly, stars in it. It's a really cool show. Has a kind of a same story as Dollhouse, so maybe I should have inserted it in there. But if you ever enjoy that kind of spy thriller, it's another good show, Covert Affairs. But story never ended, got canceled, bad ratings essentially. Typical story.
She's a good actress.
She's a great actress. But they never finished the story, so I felt really bad. But
yeah,
what can you do? Had an Alias feel to it, kind of.
Okay.
But
I dig it. I can check it out.
Sorry. No,
you're fine.
Oh wait,
man.
did we even talk about what last 2 are we talking about now?
Stargate Universe and the Expanse.
Expanse, yes, the 2 sci-fi shows. which is very
Stargate-
typical of sci-fi. Before we get to this, we want to talk about one show called Battlestar Galactica, considered one of the greatest shows in the world ever. Probably one of the best sci-fi television, if not the best sci-fi television.
Minus the last episode.
Yeah. But Battlestar Galactica, which was on Sci-Fi Channel, which also suffered the writer's strike, the same writer's strike that Heroes suffered, and you notice it in the writing as well, that
but it came back. They had the original writers back at the end.
Every single season, it was on the verge of getting canceled by Sci-Fi. Every single season. Because despite the fact it was a great critically acclaimed show and fans loved it, it didn't have the quote-unquote ratings and to warrant the money they were spending on the set and all that production to put the show on.
Expensive show.
Because it was an expensive show.
Especially for the time.
Made by Ron Moore, who also did Star Trek and a bunch of other things. But this is the history of Sci-Fi Channel and sci-fi television, is that it has a horrible history of having these great shows that are well done and well written, but unfortunately the budget of it just never can warrant what NBC Universal, which owns Sci-Fi, felt like it wanted to spend on a science television show that was on a cable network. So a lot of shows, good shows, got canceled because they didn't have the ratings to support the huge budget that it cost to make. So,
which is sad.
This is the environment that these two shows that we're about to talk about is in, which is Stargate Universe and Expanse.
I'm gonna try and not go too far over. We're trying to keep these to about an hour.
We can talk about it for 5 minutes. We're really close to an hour. We got it. Let's go. 5 minutes.
Close. So quick. If you watched Stargate Universe, it usually means you went through a lot to get to that point, because they had Stargate SG-1 and Stargate Atlantis.
And two movies too.
And two TV movies plus the original. Now the movie itself, fantastic. I love it. You
need to watch the original movie too, actually, to be honest, to get to where you are. So imagine you have the first film. Them all. The first film, and then you gotta watch Stargate, 10 seasons of Stargate SG-1, 4 seasons of Atlantis, 2 movies of Stargate SG-1, then you get to Stargate Universe.
SG-1 is tough. I tried to go back and rewatch that, and it is.
Those first few seasons are terrible.
Yeah, they're horrible. They're terrible writing.
It's a comedy.
It gets better.
If you look at the first 4 seasons of Stargate SG-1 as a comedy and a satire, you can get over it.
It's hilarious.
It's hilarious.
But it's got MacGyver in it.
Yeah. It was done by Showtime. It barely had a budget.
Was it Showtime that did them?
Yeah, and it didn't get any better until Sci-Fi actually picked up Stargate and bought Stargate out from Showtime.
And then they put out Atlantis. Because they're like, we own this. Let's make a second show.
Let's make a second show. Big. And then it really started getting better, I want to say, around the 4th season.
Which, if you like Jason Momoa, go back and watch Stargate Atlantis, because that's one of his earliest things.
That's like
not bad
one of his first things. And because of Stargate fans, that is how he got cast as Khal Drogo. Because Stargate fans put up a campaign for it when they were talking about casting Khal Drogo for Game of Thrones, and all these Stargate fans were like, he's perfect. And that's how he got his job.
And Atlantis has my girl Jewel State, who was from Firefly as Callie. She plays she came in like medic 2 seasons in this one. Yeah, she came in. She's fantastic in it.
3rd season, I think.
Yeah, and then you get the gem that is finally something that you're like, oh, this is actually really interesting. And you get Stargate Universe, which went 1 season, and it was like maybe 20 episodes at most. And you've got I can't remember anybody's name. I know Ben Bowder made an appearance in that, who was from
Ming-Na Wen's in it.
Atlantis. And then you've got the major, I can't even remember their names, it was so long ago. The woman who played eventually got the major rank, and she came in and had a little bit of a crossover. But this show, a lot of Stargate
and Stargate Atlantis, SG-1 Atlantis characters definitely help usher in the show.
But they finally got to do the concept that everybody wanted, and they're portal jumping all over the place. The whole point of the show is to go find, like, they're on this ship that was like supposedly one of the original architects of ancient ships, and they're traveling the universe in it, and it's, oh my god, it's really well written. I'm not doing it justice. Give me a better synopsis of
The
Universe.
idea is essentially it took all those other previous shows and previous things to create this beautiful universe and this kind of mythology behind the way Stargate works. And finally, they kind of settled the stories kind of Stargate SG-1 and Stargate Atlantis, and then they decide to set off on this kind of crazy. It kind of gives me a Star Trek Voyager feel, which is like they're far away from home, they're stranded on the ship, they can't find their way back, they're cut off pretty much from Earth, from supplies, they have limited communication with Earth through the technology that they found in the previous series. And it's just like very has like slight survival feel to it, and also a very like the stories, despite Stargate always had a more plot centered show because plots and action kind of drive the sci-fi genre. And despite the fact that there's plenty of action in Stargate Universe, this show was a very seriously character-driven show. The characters mattered way more than the overall arching story. And because it was a much more slower-paced show, I think it didn't hit quite right with fans who were used to the more action, fast-paced comedy and lightness of Stargate. So this is coming off, of course, at the heels of Battlestar Galactica, which was a darker sci-fi show, and its spin-off, which was Caprica. So these three shows were all airing at the same time. So
forgot about Caprica. They canceled that too after a season.
They canceled that too after a season. So take from it what you will of why Stargate Universe was darker and why it might have alienated some of its fans. People, when it came out, the Stargate fans hated it. Like, a lot of them hated it. Yeah, Stargate, they were like, this is not Stargate. But after it was canceled, people were like, oh man, like, you know, like, so typical.
It had Brian J. Smith, who I didn't really recognize much of the time, but he goes on to be in
Lou
Sense8.
Diamond Phillips is in it for too. I forgot about that.
Lou Diamond Phillips. And it's got Robert Carlyle, who everyone will recognize, but barely anyone knows
who his name is.
His name.
He's on Once Upon a Time.
Yep, I was gonna say he's Rumpelstiltskin.
Once Upon a Time,
which I thought was funny.
Mr.
Which
Gold
is another
himself.
show that went off the rails.
Yeah.
But he was excellent in this show as this like, oh, it's so good. I liked it a lot. You really have to enjoy Stargate to really watch this show, because if you don't, you may not appreciate it as much.
No. My sister didn't watch Stargate, any of the Stargates. I mean, she kind of seen a few episodes, but she didn't really know. But she watched Stargate Universe and she really liked it. So if you've never seen other Stargate, you don't really need to enjoy the show. You can watch it without.
I suppose you don't,
because
you won't get some of those
inside things, but that's okay.
But like, whatever.
Who cares? It's still a good show.
And now, another sci-fi show, one of George's favorite current television shows, The Expanse. I'm gonna just give you the floor on this one. I've really only watched the first season, and I need to rewatch it again because
we're gonna do an Expanse
time.
podcast because it's such a good show.
I'll catch up and we'll do one.
Yeah, I need to make
give it to
it too. Well, Expanse, of course, started on Sci-Fi Channel.
Do not spoil anything.
I'm not going to spoil it. Started on. I'll try to keep it as unspoiler free as I can. But essentially, it started on Sci-Fi Channel. Story takes place, I want to say, like 100 years in the future, maybe roughly 100, 200 years in the future. Humanity has gone out into the solar system. We've colonized Mars, as well as the asteroid belt, as well as traveling all the way out past Pluto. Space travel and technology has made it possible. It's considered, without spoiling much of the plot, essentially, it has a very, almost like a Game of Thrones in outer space feel to it, without having so many storylines of Game of Thrones. The writers, this was originally a book series, and the writers of the book series have worked with George R.R. Martin on Game of Thrones, a TV show, before, so they understand some of the pitfalls that the show had suffered, and they did a really good job avoiding it. It suffers some of the same problems that a lot of sci-fi does, which is it struggles with the first season, of the slow pacing of the first season, but once it hits its stride, and it's like full steam ahead. It is one of the only shows you can find on Rotten Tomato who scored high the first season, but then scored 100% the next season, and then scored another 100% the following season, and then scored another 100% the season after that.
Damn. All right. Well, I mean,
It has
I got to
it
pick
is
this
one
up.
of the best highly rated shows on Rotten Tomatoes. The only thing was the last season, which was, of course, suffers from the fact that it was only 6 episodes long. Like all good shows have become shortened. But that's a whole nother issue, you know.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean
Which
that
we've
the show
talked
is unsatisfying as far as the ending goes or whatever you want to say, but I'm not going to spoil it. You make your own decision about it. But got canceled by Sci-Fi Television. Everyone was like, what in the world like is going to happen like to this amazing show? Even though there's books about it, you could finish reading the books to find the story. People were like, it's not the same, you know? So the campaign was so incredibly huge to bring it back. They actually flew planes over Amazon studio offices with banners about saving the Expanse and tried their best to get like either Netflix, or Netflix actually had it streaming already, the episodes that had aired. So they were trying to either get Netflix or Amazon to pick it up. And funny story is that the cast, because of how realistic space travel is in the show, and this is one of the greatest things they talk about, is Adam Savage actually did behind the scenes with them and talked about how the show is so incredibly realistic about real concepts of space travel, about gravity, about zero G, and how real space travel could legitimately work in the solar system. So because the show was so incredibly good, it got recognized by for an award, and for like a space kind of travel, space NASA type of style award. And at the same place award show, Jeff Bezos is also one of the keynote speakers and being given an award, and he got to meet the crew of the show, and he's like, man, I love the show. He like met the cast and he was like, you guys, the show's great, like I really like it. I know like some of the guys at the studio are kind of trying to talk and we're trying to work something out. I'm not sure if it's going to work out. Goes to sit down and he gets on his phone and texts for 15 minutes before he's about to give his acceptance speech. And then when he goes up to the podium, he's like, before I get started, I just want to shout out to the Expanse, and I want to say that because we like for the last 15 minutes I was talking to the studio on like the phone, and I want them to know like the show's been saved. And like the whole entire audience and the whole entire like place just like erupts because they're all there because they know about the show as well. So it's like, just goes to show when you're a multi-billionaire, a 15 minutes on the phone could save your own show. But that is how good the show was, is that like they got the attention of the world's richest man, you know, and he ended up saving the show. That's and crazy. Ended up finishing the story of what they could. 2 more seasons on 3 more seasons. 3 more seasons. I said
several more seasons.
Yeah, it was a total of 6 seasons, and then you got 3 more seasons on Sci-Fi. So, or on Amazon Prime, I mean. So, great show. Never got its mainstream, I think, exposure, but I think it will stack up there as probably some of the best science fiction out there, if not just television.
I liked the first season. You know, it is as much as the pacing is Tom Jane, you know, so I'm all for it.
Very film noir in that first season with him. He's so cool. He plays like a detective. It's his story is very slow,
but it's good.
It's really good. Sore's in it. Sore, what is her last name? Sore. She's in Punisher. She's also in Star Trek. Sore.
Couldn't tell you.
She plays Ava Sorella, who's like kind of like has a more of a political role to it.
The older woman with that like really raspy voice that sounds like she smoked 16 packs a day. I like her.
Agashlo. I don't know how
she's
to pronounce
good.
her last
She's
name.
very
good.
good.
Does a really good job.
Yeah, I like her a lot. Look at that. We got through all of this. Basically, what we were trying to say with this, not just being able to talk about some of the shows that we enjoyed that we felt were finishing too soon, is watch your shows. Like, if you love these things, promote them. Talk to your friends about them. You know, get people to watch them. Some of these things deserve more. And should deserve, you know, should get more. Some of them don't, you know, some of them, their time is too far past. I think, you know,
I think there's some of these shows that ended years ago. There's lessons to be learned that we're now living in a different era of possibility of like what audiences and what people are able to make happen, I think. And so it just goes to show that with this many shows that we have listed, which is what, 20 shows total.
I didn't think we were going to talk about that.
Yeah,
many,
with
but
20
hey.
shows total, I'm thinking more than half of these shows got some kind of revival or some kind of like, some kind of relaunch.
Futurama,
Majority
Family
of these
Guy,
shows got some kind of save. If
Brooklyn
you count
Nine-Nine,
Firefly,
The Expanse,
if you count Firefly, like got sort of its ending. Agent Carter,
X-Men's
I will
coming
put that
back.
on that. I'll put Agent Carter on that. Like Peggy got her story finished. Expanse got
Heroes
saved.
came back.
Heroes came back. Tried to come back
and do it again.
like
a lot of these things can happen.
Yeah, and it's now especially. I mean, really, what kicked off this idea of this episode was mostly the fact that Netflix is bringing back Daredevil, which is something I think we've all been waiting since all those shows have gone off the air. Is like I've been waiting for Jessica Jones to come back because Kristen Ritter deserves a chance.
We're in that weird time in Marvel where everything I watch I'm watching with like a grain of salt, and I'm slightly skeptical going into it. Not necessarily the last two movies, the Spider-Man and Strange, but like the shows, I'm always kind of like, like what are they gonna do? Like where is it gonna go? We still haven't really. We're starting to kind of see where it's going, and so now they're starting to kind of bring back these older shows, and I'm like, how are they gonna tie these in? Everyone's asking these questions. How are they gonna do? We saw Fantastic Four. We saw Mr. Reed Richards, and we got Agent. Spoilers. We got Captain Carter, and like we're getting all these like little tidbits of everything. But how are these shows, the Netflix shows that were canceled, that were loved, a lot of were loved. Four of the 5 shows were great, not including the Defenders, because it was a weird one. But like Iron Fist wasn't great, Defenders wasn't great, but like Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, Daredevil, those 3, Punisher, those were good shows. Some of ups and downs, highs and lows. So it's like, how are they going to bring it in? What are they going to do with it?
Is it going to more better suited to play Punisher too? It was just so well done.
Oh, so couldn't agree more. And he's going to come back.
He will.
He is.
Yeah.
I don't know how it's going to fit in. Hopefully it's
I want these guys on the big screen. I wouldn't be surprised if like Daredevil comes back and that's how they get Punisher to come back. Actually, it's like he deserves like a really good like return to like the universe.
Yeah, but how are they going to do it in the like? I want them in the movies. I love seeing them as TV shows.
I don't mind if they're not.
Something.
I don't mind if like they're not.
True.
I really don't, because like a lot of what's going to be interesting is to see how these shows characters look on the big screen. And some of them are just never going to flush out quite right.
It'll be interesting. It really will.
The real test, because like Scarlet Witch doesn't count because she's already been on the big screen. And then she went to the small screen. And then she came back to the big screen again. So she's already done that.
So that works.
So that doesn't count. Loki also doesn't count because you've seen Loki on the big screen first. Then he got his small then he's going to come back again.
First 3 or 4 don't count.
Yeah. Falcon, same thing. Winter Soldier, same thing. But probably the real test that you want to see is Miss Marvel. This kind of weird experiment that Miss Marvel, this weird kind of thing that they're doing, experiment with a different type of style and different type of audience, and then they got to somehow throw that back up in with Monica Rambeau that they found from WandaVision, and then put that on the big screen with somebody as big and as powerful and as CGI put together as Captain Marvel. So
yeah,
let's see how this goes.
I mean, it's going to be interesting to see them up there. We'll talk about it on another one. We could go on for another fucking hour on this if we really wanted to, but we're not doing what we did last time, which was record 2 episodes at once because we're both very fatigued by the end of that. So, again, just watch your shows, enjoy them. If there's a show that we missed that was canceled and you really loved it, write in the comments. We'll love to chat more about it. I'm happy to get in there and mix it up and talk about shows.
One of these days, you guys should all write stuff in the comments. One of these days, maybe we'll go over random comments and like go back. That'll be fun. Yeah. When we do like years later, 100 episode special as we go back and look.
There you go. I like it. I'm gonna do a self plug. If you haven't checked us out before, and this is your first time watching us, go to the Spotify. There's about 10, 15 episodes, 10 episodes that were all done before the YouTube and Twitch stuff that we started. There's some great interviews on there. My first episode with Dan was on there, and a few others. So give that a look. The Modern Nerd, Spotify. You can catch it on Podbean, anywhere you find your podcasts. If you're on Google, if you're on Apple, whatever it may be, you can just search The Modern Nerd, and we'll come up. Usually, I think it's probably one word for some of them. Check out the YouTube if you want to catch some of the other episodes. We've done a lot there. We've got a couple of wrestling episodes. If you're a wrestling fan, we've got some other ones. We've done a bunch of them. A lot of reviews that we've done. If you want to hear our opinions on Spider-Man, and the Spider-Man episode is actually down because it had some technical difficulties. But if you want to hear what we thought about the Batman and Doctor Strange, they're up there. We go in length on a lot of those. Moon Knight, and we're gonna have a couple more review ones coming up because a lot of stuff just happened. Even though we're gonna be on delay on all of our episodes, but check it out. Modern Nerd Instagram, nerd_modern at Twitter. I'll put them all in the comments on the YouTube, so check that out.
What are we gonna do next week?
We're gonna definitely be talking about the first 3 episodes of what's it called? Obi-Wan.
Okay.
And I don't know. We'll come up with a couple other things. There's a lot of trailers that have dropped. We'll probably talk about that kind of stuff. We'll go over the She-Hulk trailer. We'll go over, the second Thor trailer, and kind of go over some of the things that are coming up in theaters, coming out soon.
Stranger Things just dropped also.
Yeah, I got to watch all that. A lot's happened this last week or so. So keep an eye out.
You can find me GJC327 on all socials, and also on Twitch, where I play,
as always,
video games.
The gracious host. Yeah, check him out. A lot of Hearthstone. Hopefully he'll get into some Fork Knife.
Maybe
I will be playing Fortnite. If you're ever on, I'd love to play with you again. Obviously, I think I'm Sir Slice13 on Twitch. I haven't started streaming yet. I'm still putting some stuff together, but I will be doing that soon. Granted, when I'm streaming, it'll probably be like 2:00 in the morning for most people because
those are prime gamer hours.
Yeah, that's true.
Those are prime gamer hours.
I never thought about that.
Degenerate gaming hours only.
Although actually, I'll be streaming at night, which would be more or less noon, which is not prime for everybody else. But check it out. Mostly check out George's stuff, GJC327 on his Twitch and YouTube and everything. Otherwise, we have been The Modern Nerd, and we thank you for coming, and hopefully we'll see you again next time.